Hi everybody, Tim here with today's episode of Star Trek Voyager, Season 3, Episode 11, The Q and the Gray. Probably one of my favorite episodes. If you guys have watched my reviews, you guys know I'm a huge lover of Q and the character, so it's not really a big surprise. To kind of go, still continuing with Q, I know a lot of people have kind of said, like, they think that Q should have specifically stayed with just Picard. Like, he was only in one episode of Deep Space Nine, and I always thought that was kind of like a hit and miss with the writers for that one. Like, Q could have done so much with Cisco because of, like, their banter back and forth, and I liked how Q was in 3 episodes of Voyager altogether, but again, like, I wish we had seen more of Q and seen him more reoccurring. Like, for The Next Generation, he was basically in 1 episode every season, give or take if you average it out, and to be only in 3 episodes of Voyager, like, I feel like that was really a disservice to the character. He could have done so much, especially for an omnipotent character. Like, it doesn't matter, he could have just been there for whatever reason. So this episode starts out great with the crew watching a supernova, and we see the Doctor on the bridge using his mobile emitter, which I love because he got it like 2 episodes ago, and in the last episode, Warlord, he didn't use it at all that I can recall. So I felt like I liked how they really kind of hit it off from the very beginning, like, hey, this is a thing, you're going to see the Doctor in other places other than sickbay right off the start, so I loved that. We go, again, right off the bat with Q and Janeway, him hitting on her, him being in bed with her, which again is kind of a shout out to, the episode Tapestry, where he's in bed with Picard. And just kind of their dialogue back and forth, it's really great. I like when he's like trying to compete, quote unquote, with Chakotay, and he's like, well, mine's bigger, and he has like the whole facial tattoo. Just stuff like that. Like, John Delancey has such good delivery when it comes to jokes and timing and stuff like that. He does it so well. Probably one of my favorite lines of all of Star Trek is when he's really trying hard to get with Janeway, and he makes puppies, or a dog specifically, show up out of nowhere, and this is where the female Q finally shows up, and she's like, what are you doing with that dog? And Q and Janeway look down, and she's just like, I'm not talking about the puppy. And it's so great, and I have to pause it every single time because I love the line, and just the way John Delancey, like, his mouth drops open, like, did you just say that? And it's done so well. We realize that the supernovas are actually like bombs going off in the Q continuum, and that after the events of Death Wish, where Janeway helped a Q kill himself, that the whole continuum has basically been in this giant uproar, and things are just going bad, and that's why Q is here to talk to Janeway, because he wants to have a child, which is something the continuum's never really done. So he brings Janeway to the continuum, which they did before in the episode Death Wish, where in that episode it was like this gas station in the middle of the desert, whereas now it's basically the equivalent of the Civil War, which is where this title gets its name from, the blue and the gray and the Q and the gray. We see Q get injured and he's actually bleeding. Whereas on Voyager's trying to figure out how to get to Janeway, and they have the female Q who's basically stuck there without her powers, but she still has all of the knowledge. So she's like, oh, we have to go into the supernova, and Tuvok's like, are you crazy? We're gonna die. And she's like, oh no, we'll be fine. She has a great line talking to B'Elanna about how, like, I like Klingon females, they have such spunk, which is kind of a shout out to the actress. Susie had played a female Klingon before in The Next Generation. She was actually Worf's lover and his baby mama. So that was kind of a little fun shout out to that. We see Janeway talk to Q about how she's going to go to the other Qs and basically surrender. And she's like, I'm going to take this white flag. And he's like, Kathy, don't be a hero. Which is a shout out to one of my favorite songs, Billy, Don't Be a Hero. I don't know if that's what they were referring to, but that's what I took it as. So, I mean, it's just this huge war on, like, what do the Qs believe in? Like, should they, like, support reproduction and do stuff like that, or should they just kind of stay stagnant for the rest of their omnipotent survival. Like, it's a really kind of heavy topic on what they need to be doing. Eventually, Voyager does make it through, and it's kind of funny if you think about it, because like Paris shows up and he's holding like a musket because it's a Civil War theme. But this is like the continuum, and these are the weapons that are causing supernovas. So these are like the most powerful weapons known to man, or even not known to mankind. So that's kind of interesting when you really start to think, like, if Paris had just shot the musket off randomly, he could have blown up an entire galaxy, just not even meaning to, which shows how powerful the Qs really are. Eventually, we do see Q and the female Q get together and they have sex, quote unquote, right on the screen. And it's kind of this funny little finger moment where they just like tap fingers and he's like, "Was I good?" And she's like, "You were the best." And it's this funny scene. And even Janeway's like, "That's it? Like, that's all you had to do?" And Q's like, "You had your chance. Go away." We do see him return with the baby Q, and he's like, "Ask Auntie Kathy to be your godmother." And it's this really great scene. Now, I do like the follow-up episode Q2, where we see Q as like a teenager, but I feel like we could have done so many more episodes with John Delancey and the baby, and even the female Q returning. They could have done so much. And also, I'm a little bit surprised that after all of this, when they do return, they return to their exact coordinates. He didn't make them like 100,000 light years closer or something ridiculous. So, like, not necessarily like, oh, he cut our trip in half, but he knocked off 6 months or he knocked off a year out of thanks or something. So that kind of bothered me a little bit. It's also interesting to note, this is the first episode of Star Trek after the movie First Contact came out. Now, Deep Space Nine was still in their like mid-season break, so we haven't seen them in the gray outfits yet. But I think technically after this episode, Voyager is no longer in proper dress code because they're still wearing the colored top and the black bottom, whereas like according to the Next Generation movies, it's now the gray with the color on the inside. And then we will see Deep Space Nine go to that color scheme as well fairly soon. So for those who have seen this one, this is the penultimate episode of Q. There's only one Q episode left after this. So what do you guys think about this whole episode? Him trying to romance Janeway, him trying to have a kid, the female Q, our last trip to the continuum. Go ahead, let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys for subscribing. It means a lot to me. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time for Macrochism.